Dan Myers here to tell you about State Farm Insurance agents Eric Means in Shakopee and Andy Hedlund in Rogers. When it comes to hockey talk, Gorgie and I have you covered. And when it comes to ensuring what is most important to you, Eric and Andy are the very best in the business. Both of these guys are hockey guys. Meansy, he played for the Gophers, while Heads, he played college hockey in Mankato for the Mavericks. Hashtag horns up. Meansy is my State Farm agent, and even though I live on the wrong side of the river, he's able to take care of all my home and auto insurance needs. So if you're like me and you live in that state to the east, yikes. Or maybe you live in Minnesota and you have a lake, home, or property in Wisconsin, call Eric Means in Shakopee and have him take care of you as well. 952-446-7067. That's 952-446-7067. Maybe you're a North Metro guy or gal and want to work with Andy Hedlund out of Rogers. That's okay too. Give him a call. 763-QUOTE-IT is the number. 763-786-8348. Or check him out online at thehockeyagent.com. That's State Farm Insurance and agents Eric Means and Andy Hedlund. Two guys that take care of us, and they'll take good care of you as well. Hello and welcome again to the Sieve and the Scribe podcast, presented by Minnesota Hockey Magazine and State Farm Insurance. Friends, agents Eric Means in Shakopee and Andy Hedlund in Rogers. I'm Dan Myers from Wild.com, and joining me as always is the very lovely and talented Kevin Gorg on what should be a very fun episode 13 of the Sieve and the Scribe. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Daniel. Looking forward to this. I have a mutual admiration for this gentleman and have for a long time. Just one of the most genuine and sweet human beings I've ever come in contact with in the game of hockey, and just a wealth of knowledge, perspective as player, coach, teammate, just the places he's been and the people he's contacted. I mean, this thing could be 3-4 hours long and it wouldn't be enough time. So I'm happy to get him for 25-30 minutes today and pick his brain.
He's also one of the best looking and maybe the strongest human being I know. Let's bring him into the conversation right now. There he is. You know the face, and you'll soon know the voice when you hear it. Minnesota Wild assistant coach Darby Hendrickson. Darbs, thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you for the kind intro. I'll give you that cash after the show.
Bruno somewhere, if he catches this podcast, will probably have some sharp words. And before we get started, I will tell you, Darby, I've been blessed to be the sideline reporter for the Minnesota Wild for 16 years, and I've seen a lot of different cool aspects of the job. But one of my very favorite nights, I've told you this before, but playoff series back in 2015, Wild and Dallas Stars. Mikko Koivu scores the overtime game winner to force a Game 6 back in Mini, and Torch at the time, John Torchetta is the coach, invites Aaron Sickman and I to the coaches meeting, and meetings in quotation marks, after in one of the convention rooms at the hotel in Dallas. And I basically, along with Aaron Sickman, got to sit and watch you and Andrew Brunette have a burger and a couple of beers, trade hockey stories and jabs for the better part of 5 hours. One of the best nights of my life. And I still, to this day, smile every time I think of that night.
Well, I remember that too. That was a good moment. Obviously, we scored in overtime. We still had a chance in our series, and I think when Torch came in, it was fun. There's rare moments, I think, where you're together as a team, and we travel. Obviously, both of you guys travel with us. You see a lot of stuff, but sometimes behind the scenes is fun. And Bruno, I don't know, how do we start with him? Well, he's a head coach now, so we got to be careful. But he loved the game and telling stories, and I think that's why people respect him here. I know his heart is still in Minnesota. He's Northern Ontario, but he had a real impact, I think, in not only his playing days, but for sure the coaching he did, the management. He was we were fortunate to have him through Minnesota, and he still will always be a dear friend for life. But he was a unique guy, and he still is. And now he's doing a great job in Florida, and I think when you mention him, it's not surprising that he's a head coach. Yes, there was tough circumstances, how it all happened in Florida, but he's guided, and he's humble, and he's bright, and he's doing good.
The fun thing for me, Darbs, to watch, and you kind of went through this same thing. I don't know if did your guys' times as broadcasters overlap?
Well, this is really important to talk about because I had the great pleasure of working with KG with Fox, and you walk into that world and you really are learning, and you're really trying to figure out the whole thing. And first of all, I was fortunate to work with Minnie, obviously Anthony, who travels with us, Marnie Gellner, KG. There were so many good people, but we had fun. Like when Kevin would host, we have some stories, and Kevin could probably finish it. But we had fun and we laughed. And to me, that was the funnest part about learning that world. And you got to do your homework. You want to be on. You want to tell the listeners why. But it's a different animal from when you play, where you get interviewed. Now you're trying to carry it, and I loved learning that. It was fun with the people, and so many people behind the scenes in the truck, and who made you look good, or they were the camera people. They were all the people in the background who were just awesome. And we had some neat events going up to like Moorhead, and really getting to meet the people behind the scenes that the public doesn't see because we're the people on the camera. But just really good people and great learning. And there were so many people with Fox at the time before Bally's that were awesome, and it was a lot of fun.
So many people forget, Darby, after your playing days were done, that was actually the route you took first. And that's what I was going to say about Bruno, is I admire, that path after you're done playing. I know can't be easy. It can't be, to replace kind of that mentality and that grind and that routine that you have. And you were someone, you tried TV, you went a different route with the coaching. You've now been on the coaching staff for more than a decade with the Wild, but Bruno kind of did the same thing. Got done playing, tried, the management, was an assistant GM, tried some, pro development stuff, and then went into the coaching side of things. And he seems to have really found where he's meant to be now as the head coach of the Florida Panthers, and the guy who very well may win the Jack Adams as the coach of the year this year.
Yeah, and Bruno, he tried it. He did some national stuff, TSN, and I think it was a really good experience. And I mentioned the people, but I say there's a window, I think, for a lot of players when they're done playing. What do they want to do? Do they want to take a break from hockey? Have they earned enough income? They just want to be with their young kids, and all those things are, whatever decision guys make is 100%. They should do it, but there is a window, I think, when players are out of the game, and if that window gets too long, it's harder to maybe jump in 8 or 9 years later and just say, I want to coach because I think I could be a good coach. There's a process to being around. TV was one for myself, Bruno, different people, obviously Ryan Carter now, Wes Walls. And, you're learning how to, you're learning a different part for sure, but you're close to the game. And I think through that, some opportunities can open up. I think that's what happened in my situation with coaching. It was an opportunity, and at the time, but I think if I wasn't around TV or some other, you don't know how those things would open up. So I think there's a window, and I said, I want to do this. I want to try it. I want to learn it. And it was fun. Like I said, it was fun. We laughed a lot, and
we did. And you and Bruno are both such natural storytellers. I heard you on the radio on Beyond the Pod and other shows, and on with PA and on KFan, and just sitting here doing this podcast. You and Bruno have that natural gift. It's why you're great coaches. It's how you guys are able to connect with young players and motivate them, and it's why Dan and I were so excited to have you on this show. But when it gets to coaching specifically, I always think of your dad. I was lucky enough to coach with your dad in the Lake Conference when I first got my start in the early 90s at Burnsville High School. And your dad's no longer with us. I know he's still with you every single day. Now that you're coaching, looking back, how much of this do you feel like is partly due to your upbringing, being around your dad and being around that element of teaching people the right way to play the game?
Yeah, thanks for bringing him up. Larry was he was a leader of our family and obviously a coach, and you were a young coach. And I think you told some story that he came into the coaches the big meeting with camouflage on. He definitely was a personality. Yep. He started young in the coaching world, meaning, he coached football. He was hockey was his love. He played. He got injured his knee, so he didn't really fulfill probably his collegiate career how he wanted and thereafter. But coaching became what he wanted to do, and he was proud, and he knew that's what he wanted to do, be a coach. So I think just all the years, whether it's my brother, the people that are around us, we had a lake place in Duluth that we would share and talk about people and how do you, how do you work with people? How do you get better? How do you be yourself but stay in your lane? How do you, all those parts for him. And he loved it. He was passionate. He was, he just had his own way about it. I have a different personality, but there's so much I learned from him. And I don't necessarily, I'm thankful to be in the game, but he was more like, I want to coach. Where for me, it kind of, it evolved. Obviously mentioning doing the broadcasting, then there was an opportunity, and then you're learning. But there's so many things you say, you think about your dad 100%. There's so many things and lessons that he taught, or how he would, how you're trying to create solutions. By the way, there's a dog like grabbing my hand underneath here. It keeps chewing on me. But he would no, there's so many things in his that I hear his voice still, of how to get to work and how to figure it out and how to work with your staff, work with your team, and be, in your role, make a difference. And I think that's something that always echoes with him. And I mentioned he liked to have, you mentioned me and Bruno, like, it's fun to be with your staff. It's fun to be with your people. Our group is terrific, and you can disagree and agree on things, but you're always on the same common ground when you leave the coach's room, to be on the same page, to ultimately make your team better.
Our guest today on the Sieve and the Scribe is Darby Hendrickson, Minnesota Wild assistant coach. And Darbs, I want to talk about your playing career here for a little bit. 518 games in the NHL. You played Toronto, a brief stint with the New York Islanders, the Vancouver Canucks, of course, the Minnesota Wild, and the Colorado Avalanche at the tail end of your career. You actually made your debut, I see, in the Stanley Cup playoffs, right? That your first NHL game came during playoff time with the Maple Leafs back in 1994. Just what was that like as a young kid, finally getting your first taste of the league, but doing it under the bright lights of being a Toronto Maple Leaf, but, especially bright being in the postseason?
Yeah, no, it's fun. I'm thankful I was able to have a career, and you always wanted to play longer, and you always wanted to score more goals. But you look back later, and I'm thankful. And I was fortunate to be with the Olympic team in '94. I was going to go back to Minnesota. I enrolled in school. I still had 2 years left. I really wanted to play with my brother. He was 2 years younger. But the opportunity was right to turn pro. It was actually Cliff Fletcher was the GM at the time. Obviously Chuck's father in Toronto. So I ended up signing. I went to St. John's, Newfoundland for about a month, and was just thrilled to be in pro hockey and see how the next year went, go to camp and see if you could make the team. I ended up getting called up. It was in Chicago Stadium, which happened to be the last game of all time there. And I went to the pregame skate. I just tried to work as hard as I could. I don't, you're young. And I remember Pat Burns, the coach, the late Pat Burns, just said, "Are you ready to play?" I said, "Yeah, well, I'm ready." And you didn't know if you're going to play or not. I went from a bench in the hallway almost to a stall. And then he came thundering down and actually said, I'm starting in the lineup. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And I remember Doug Gilmour, who was the captain of the team. He came and grabbed me in my stall, and like he didn't shake me, but he kind of threw me against my stall and just said, "Don't be nervous, kid," or something. I'm like, okay, I won't. But it just was everyone has their first game and their first story. It was fun to be on a really good team. I look back at like that era of the Maple Leafs. They had guys like Mike Gartner, Dave Anderchuk, Wendell Clark, Doug Gilmour. You were kind of awestruck when you walked in. At the same token, you had a focus and you had a job to do, and you had to quickly put some of those things on the side. But it just was fun. You're in Toronto, hockey mecca, Original Six. It's the playoffs. It was a thrill of a lifetime. And before the Wild, I would say that was a highlight, breaking in that organization and being there for parts of 5 years that were great memories.
You played for another legendary coach when you got here, and I remember vividly sitting in my seats. My high school buddies and I got together and got season tickets when the team came back. We'd all had our hearts ripped out of our chest when the North Stars left. And so when you were on that team, Darby, that restarted NHL hockey here in the Twin Cities, it was emotional for a lot of us of a certain age. And to be a Minnesota guy, not only in the lineup and on that team, but to score that goal, first goal on home ice for the Minnesota Wild on one knee. I know the players have mimicked the goal and done stuff in practice, but honestly, for you as a Minnesota guy to come back, reflecting on that moment, how special was that night for you guys?
It was fun. And you said it, I think the state, there were so many memories our first year of just, just different events, whether the Dallas Stars came back, whether it was our first exhibition game, just the excitement of the fans. And they didn't really know a lot of the players. I mean, we were all came from different expansion era of different players that weren't as well known, but people didn't, they embraced the group that was there. Obviously, you had a great coach in Jock. And Bob Nagley was the right person at the right time to set the table for everything. And from Doug Riseborough to kind of everyone and how it was aligned, it just it was amazing how many character people they found early. And we might not have all scored 30 goals the first or whatever, but they just added the right pieces as it went. And the early games, the excitement, like I still remember we played Anaheim in our first exhibition game, and it was sold out for warmups. Like, and we were coming out, and guys are looking at me going, I said, well, this is Minnesota. They love it. And it just was moments like that even before some of the other, games. And I remember Neil Broughton, because so many of us loved Neil growing up as a kid. He was a Minnesotan, obviously won a cup with New Jersey, but he was kind of that guy that's made it. He's been successful. You want to be like Neil. And I remember he did a let's play hockey when we played Dallas, and he took his jersey off and a Dallas jersey for a Wild jersey. And I think I kind of cried in the on the bench,
I think we all did.
Just because you loved Neil and he was that authentic guy. And those things just had huge, I don't know, they grabbed you. And yes, you were from Minnesota. Yes, you were thankful. You were still trying to fit in with the group. And it just was there was so many good memories in it. It's a statement to our culture and the people of how much they embraced it and how special it was.
Between 1998 and 2000, the NHL brought in 4 new teams. And I've talked to Wes Walz about this too. And what that opportunity meant to guys like him, and maybe it was similar with you, but a whole host of guys on that first Wild team back in 2000 that may not have had an NHL career either much longer or may not have gotten that second chance, kind of like Wes Walz got without expansion. Just what did that mean to you, not only as obviously a Minnesotan and being a part of that team, bringing it back here, but to just have, 80 more jobs on a nightly basis, coming into the league? It really extended and allowed, specifically a guy like Wes Walz, kind of that second chapter as an NHLer that he may not have gotten without it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we all had a different story where we came from or what team we're on. I was in Vancouver. They had actually re-signed me, so they had a pretty good team. So I actually thought that was a pretty good opportunity there. And then when there's 2 teams that come in from, Columbus being one and obviously Minnesota, like some of us thought maybe we'd get picked up or we didn't know. And if it didn't happen, Wes was different. He was in Europe, but a lot of us, we were going to try and make it where we were. And I remember thinking, wow, it'd be interesting if Columbus picked you up, and then wow, if Minnesota, that would be interesting. And I will be honest with you though, it's as much as you'd love to come home, you're kind of like, I don't know. It's kind of, you're going to lose a lot of games, and I don't know what it's going to be like, So that was my initial feeling, and obviously that's turned opposite because the group and the people, and we just how it all evolved. And thankful would be the thing I think a lot of us would say for our opportunity, but we also were hungry. And I think we all had a different, I think we all were different personalities, but we all had a similar thing called hunger, and we wanted to make it. We wanted to be good teammates. I don't think anyone put anything above yourself ever, because I don't think our head coach would allow that, number one. And number two, I think the leadership, how it evolved as we added players in the years that went, it was the right people, the right character. They really did a good job with finding the right people. And I'll mention one name. Jason Marshall was on our team. He was signed for 3 years. He was a defenseman, tough, strong, durable, but just the most unconditional human who ended up playing forward, even on our power play in the playoffs at the end. Or he would accept any role, and he was a defenseman, but he played forward at the end and just would accept whatever it took for the team to be successful. And guys like him, I believe, are how you win. And yeah, you want to have talent. Everyone says you need talent. 100, you got to have that. We know you got to have good goaltending, but you need character people who will do anything for the team. And guys like Jason Marshall, we're top of the list. And you can ask any teammate that.
I can't wait to segue into the group of character players you have now, and the leadership and the fun season we're having watching the Minnesota Wild this year. But before we jump into that subject, I've got to ask you, if you're inside hockey people all know about Jacques Lemaire. But if you're talking to a group of people that aren't as familiar with the game and the coach and the history, how would you, at a party maybe sometime this summer on a deck somewhere having a beer, explain the impact that Jacques Lemaire had on all you guys as players?
Yeah, no, Jock was he was very stern. Let's just put it this way. And I would say this: he was a prick, but he wasn't. He was, he could smile. He was he had a balance that way, but he was very how he wanted it. He set the tone early with a lot of us. Like, he's going to sit you out. Doesn't matter. For most of us, you might be out of a game and back in. But he had an impact, and he had you can ask his staff from Mike Ramsey to Mario Trombley. Like, of course they respected him. And I've had a lot of talks with Mike Ramsey over the year, just in terms of their relationship and how that was with us as players. Jock was he was not there to be your friend. Real clear. He was not there to be your friend. At the same token, if you worked and you were on the page of how he wanted you and our team to play, you're going to get rewarded. And he did that with so many people over the years, not only myself, but many throughout the years that came in and came out. I think the thing early with our team, we thought we had a really good team. We made the conference finals, and real quickly it got taken apart. And we thought we would have another chance, maybe another little crack to have a year or two. No one's saying we're thinking 5 years, but just one more year at least. And I think that was the hard part with our group, talking to people that you see later. We wanted one more crack, because within 1 year, a lot of things had changed. But obviously Jock was here for years, and they ended up winning a Northwest Division. They never had another run in the playoffs like our group did. But Jock just knew how to, he's a rare bird where you're a Hall of Famer as a player and you're a Hall of Famer as a coach. There's not many that have been on that plane. Jock had that. He knew how to press the right buttons. I've heard through even Bobby Mason and people that have been around him years, like he would coach the game like he was playing. Emotionally, he's in it. His matchups, his energy in the game. It's not like he was running around on the bench. But after the game, he wouldn't even watch video. He'd watch a movie, and he needed to wind down. So that was his approach. But he was very high level, and I think we all, when we look back at our time with Jock, he made us a better hockey player.
We got more to come with Darby Hendrickson, including a question or two maybe on that 2003 run. And we want to talk about this year's team. We'll be right back with him and all that after a message from our sponsor.
Sports fans, come on down to Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub for one of the best dining experiences around. Great food, an awesome staff, and amazing atmosphere is waiting for you just minutes from XL Energy Center on West 7th in St. Paul. Whether you're watching a game, attending a concert, or just out for a good time, Tom's is the place to be. Enjoy twofers during all live Minnesota Wild games, Viking games, and Packer games. Now serving breakfast on Sundays until 2 p.m. While dining, check out the collection of over 400 pieces of hockey memorabilia. Having a get-together? Let them cater your event. They have room for you in their newly remodeled back bar with extra parking in their brand-new parking lot. It's Tom Reed's Hockey City Pub. Give them a call, 651-292-9916. That's 651-292-9916 to schedule your next event. And check them out on the web at tomreeds.com. And if you see Tom, don't mention Ken Dryden.
The Functional Neurology Center is a Minnetonka-based clinic staffed by a caring and progressive team of chiropractic neurologists who are experienced in treating post-concussion syndrome, chronic pain, dizziness, whiplash, migraine, and performance enhancement. They are the concussion doctors that you can trust for your comprehensive brain health in Minnesota and who have helped many local professional hockey players that include Mark Parrish, Brock Nelson, Zach Parisi, and Tyler Nanny. The FNC combines innovative technological therapies with manual therapy to improve human function.
My name is Mark Parrish, and I played hockey for 15 years and professionally, and I had some concussions, some head issues. We heard about Dr. Schmo, and we're certainly glad I did, because the difference from not just session to session during the day, but from day to day has been drastic. And just with suffering from sleep depravity for years, the last 3-4 nights I've slept like a baby and slept again like I did before I had kids, for crying out loud.
You can find them online at thefnc.com.
And we are back with Wild assistant coach Darby Hendrickson. Darby, before the break, you talked about a little bit into that 2003 run and just how incredible that was. It was awesome for me. I was 18, 19 years old. I was a senior in high school. I was just the biggest Wild fan. Got just pulled into that whole run. I'm sure you did too, Kevin. A little older, but not much older than that. Still having the time of your life. Had to be the time of your life for you guys, Darby, as that run just continued. So many great stories from that run. Starting with how you guys somehow knocked off an Avalanche team that had, I don't know, like 5 or 6 Hall of Famers on it. Just what was that run now? You've had almost 20 years. It's hard to believe it's been almost 20 years since that happened. But 20 years to kind of just think about that and review that and go over it in your head. What a run, right?
It was fun. Yeah, it seems like yesterday, but it's 20 years ago. Just the group, though, the memories you remember the most are after you win an overtime game and you're in the group and everyone's just excited, like that euphoria of excited. Yet you're still like, we can keep going. And I think there was so many players that had great moments. That was fun because you were so happy for each guy. It could be Wes Wells one night, it could be Antti Laaksonen, it could be Bruno, Sergei Zoltak. On and on. We had so many good pieces, and we split, from Manny Fernandez and Dwayne Rollis, and we, there was really a split rotation with that, and we supported each guy. And there was just so many people. Jimmy Dowd, Richard Park. I mean, we could go on and on and on. But it was a group, and I think we were tight as a group. And I'll share a quick story. I remember we were playing Colorado, and we were down 3-1 and we went into Colorado, and Doug Risebrough called a meeting and just, reminded us as a team of why we're where we got to and why we were good. And it was just a reminder. Our team knew that, but it was really good on Doug's end. And we came out of that. I remember Dwayne Rollison was friends with Rob Blake, and they lived by each other in the summer. And we had walked out after a game, and he just said, "Man, you guys are a tight team. And whatever happens in this series, yeah, we're good." And then Rolly got up and told that story. And it just was, again, reminders of us and our strength as a team. And I remember coming into, those games that were they could go any way. And we came out strong. We just did. And we did our thing like we had done all year. Even in Vancouver in that series, same thing kind of happened. We were down 3-1. We went into Vancouver, and I remember this was Bruno, and like they thought they had won the cup, and he said they thought they're the 80s Oilers. We saw them practice when we came in. We're carrying our own bags, and like usually that doesn't happen in the NHL because the bags are already set up because of our trainers. But we're carrying our bags. We're kind of humble, blue collar expansion team, and they're kind of like the toast of Vancouver, and they're in the second round. They think we're done, like they think they got us. And Bruno is just like, look at these guys, look at them, 80s Oilers, no helmets on there in practice, and he just kept like sprinkling that around the locker room before the game, and we just got like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, that type of thing. I can't use the language we use, but we that stuff just started spreading around the room. Then Jimmy Dowd would be like, yeah, like he'd say in his own way, like, who are they? And then all of a sudden we would come in and we beat him, I think, I don't know, 7-2 or whatever. Like we came in with a mission, and then we got another game to play. But that's just kind of how we lived the whole thing. We kind of found our edge and found who we like, reminders of who we were, and we went in and we had different guys again, different moments, and that's what made it fun. And I think when you're done with that playoff series, yes, we got swept by Anaheim. I don't know, you're kind of in your own reflection, and you still don't believe it's over, even though you're thrilled you got that far, because it's so hard. And just to climbing a mountain to get to the top teams and get to the Final Four, but I feel like there's still left something in us that we maybe left, and I know Jaguar was good in Anaheim, but there's still parts to probably all of us that we, as thankful as we were in the run we had, we still believed we could keep going. And I think that's what allowed us to get as far as we were. But just the group in general was, you'll never forget the memories of being in a locker room with the whole group, and the individual moments were great, but the moments with the team were the best.
For me, Darby, I think reflecting on almost 20 years ago, the moment where I think a lot of hockey fans in this market were all the way bought back in, because the North Stars were entrenched in this area. They started back in the late 60s. And I think for a lot of people, a part of their hockey loving passion died when Norm Green took that team to Dallas. And I think you mentioned that first year and some of the magical moments. You referenced the Dallas game, and Neil Broughton, and some of the moments where I think people started to really get back into it. But when Andrew Burnett scored that goal in Game 7, I think the state and this fan base was all back in. Like, this is our team. This is our guys. And so for you as a player, the look on his face, I remember it was captured in the Star Tribune. It was on the cover of the sports section the next morning with the headline saying in big bold letters, "Believe." For you as a hockey player, that moment, because I have to think when you're playing a team of that talent level and with the group that you guys had, there had to be like that moment of, holy S, we actually did this. Take us through that shift, that moment, and then right after, what the ice and the room was like for you.
Yeah, well, you're right. That was obviously a huge one. And I think the perfect guy scored the goal in Bruno, who, it could be anyone. And he always said, well, I drew that ticket that day. Could have been. But you ask any of the players, he was the right guy. And he was that guy. Bruno was that guy. And I think, yes, it's only year 3 of the franchise and the start. And now you beat a team like that. But it was, I think I don't think we were in awe, actually. I think early, in the series, when we looked at the chalkboard and saw, not the dry erase board, and saw these names of these players, it was a little like, wow, this is going to be a challenge. But by the end of it, we kind of started to believe again, and we had found ways. We had momentum going. Like when Richard Park scores that goal in Game 6, we feel like we can do it again. And I just would say there's so many little parts to all these. The whole series and these different moments, and there's different moments that could go one way or the other. I think when you look back as a player, there's so many shifts that if you don't make the right simple play, that could 100% lead the other way. And some of their top dogs are on a 2-on-1 and they score. And there's so much things with discipline and penalties, but I just little parts of our group and our team. I just think there was the right leadership, and even again, Willie Mitchell, Nick Schultz is just playing big minutes when they're young players. And I don't know, it just, our group was right. Our group was set, and we were really together, was really strong. And the moments kind of evolved as it went. And it was always, I don't know, as happy as we were for Bruno, we wanted to find a moment and make the right play, but we didn't, we stayed in your lane and did your job. And, it was fun.
Obviously, Darbs, it's impossible to answer this question, but you think about that run when it came to an end in the Western Conference Finals. Game 1 in St. Paul, 0-0 hockey game. Jean-Sebastien Giguère was unbelievable. Actually won the Conn Smythe that year in a losing effort. They went on to lose to the Devils in the Stanley Cup Finals, but he was so good. Marian Gaborik has that wide open net. Looks like it's going in for a goal. Do you ever think about, man, if that puck gets across that goal line, Giguère kind of reaches back and swats at it, eyes closed with the paddle, gets it out of there. If that puck goes in and Minnesota wins Game 1, how different that series might have been and how much different that run potentially could have been for that team.
Yeah, I think we all do. And Anaheim was a good team. I mean, they go to the finals, and credit to them. But we all do. And Giguère was good, and he ends up, he wins. He's the MVP, and they don't even win the cup. But he was a factor. And I think we came from Vancouver where we had won. We played back to back, and we had flown back, and we played an afternoon game, and we didn't care. We were on adrenaline, and we were on emotion. I thought we didn't score that game, but we were flying. I think Anaheim had a big long break, and we came in just fresh from our game and buzzing. So we felt really good about our matchup, our series. We couldn't find our momentum, and it slowly, we slowly just kind of lost our that extra little, that goal that gives us our burst or whatever. We couldn't find it, and it was different situations on different nights. Remember Cliff Ronning on the power play, Game 2, breaks a stick and they go down and they score. And it was timely things like that they found a way to gain momentum. We couldn't. Obviously, we go there and lose 2 more. I don't think we scored a goal till the last game that Bruno scored, but it was tough, and they were good. And yeah, coulda, woulda. It would have been fun to see what would have happened, but that's how it went. And Giguère was good. And I know everyone said he had big equipment and all this, but he could still find a way. We couldn't do it. And all of us had chances, though, like a golden chance where we just couldn't get it done, and you got to tip your cap to them.
I love that you brought up the Rob Blake commentary with Roley about seeing how tight you guys were as a team, because I think when you're around the game as long as the three of us have been, you know it when you see it. When you see a group that's together and all bought in on the team being the priority, not the individual, you feel it, you see it. And you guys had that, Darby, and I think anybody around that team would say it. I had this conversation with you 100 times. Wes Wallace, Bruno, the same thing. This year's team, the team that you're coaching and the club that we've got right now at the Minnesota Wild sure feels that way. And, you know, we're lucky enough, Dan and I, are to travel with the team and sit in the airplane, but you guys are behind the curtain. You're in all the meetings and you're in all the fun spots, the dinners, the team meals, the meetings where you see it up close and personal. How legit is it, and how much of that tightness has been a factor this year?
You're right on. It's been great. I think Dean has done a great job just to set that tone for the culture, number one, and Billy Guerin, and you know, just in a combined sense with management to coaches being on the same page. That's huge, and ownership at the top. But it's hard to find that. I don't care if your kids are in youth soccer. You want to create. You're always trying to teach your children how to work hard and be a good teammate. I mean, those are kind of the things that are important. And at every level, it's hard, especially when you get to the highest levels of any pro sport, of being good teammates. And we really do have that. And our captain's Jared Spurgeon, who's, as we all know, is unconditional and humble as it gets. He welcomes teammates that are new. He makes teammates he's been with for years still feel important. And whether you're young or you're a veteran, Jared Spurgeon is just a spectacular person who is the captain of your team. So to me, it starts in those situations. And yes, we have so many other good people, and the captains that he's with and the other leadership on our team. There's so many, and it's definitely been, I think, a big part of how our team has had success. Yes, we have Kirill here this year, who's very special. We know that. Yes, Kevin Fiala is having a good year, all these things. But most important is just the tightness of our group. And those things carry you. And yeah, you got to have good goaltending. We know all these things. But if you have a tight group, if guys are together, especially these little moments, which we don't have a lot on the road, they want to be together. Those are the things that are you can't teach. Everyone says you want to have this, you want to have that. But unless you live it and you do it, and you can't fake that. And I do think our group has that. I don't think I know. And I do think that'll be the most important thing for us going into the postseason is our togetherness and just our group. And like I say, I know we got the talent, but we will have success because of that part. And I think the early Minnesota Wild had success that we were talking about in those days because we were strong as a team. And when you're strong as a team, you're able to handle the success as well, but you're also able to handle the adversity as well and stick together and get through it. I think that's the most important part of our group is our togetherness, for sure.
I want to pull back the curtain for folks just a little bit because this story just happened last night, and it made me think of you right away, Darbs. We get back from Montreal late last night, go through customs at MSP, and then all of us that are in the traveling party pile onto that one single bus. I mean, every single seat on that bus is taken, and you got schlep rocks like Gorg and I Gorg was sitting next to Jared Spurgeon. I was sitting across the aisle from Marc-Andre Fleury. I mean, it's just a hodgepodge. And last night, we're getting off the bus, and we're near the back, so guys get off. Flower tells me, he goes, here, go ahead. So I get off the bus, and I walk up, and near the front, and Kevin was there for this too. Matt Boldy's sitting there on one side, and I can't remember if it was Connor Dewar or Brandon Duhaime. One of the other rookies was on. And they're waiting there, and I stop and said, "You guys want to go?" And they say, "No, we're not getting off the bus before Flower gets off the bus." And it was telling to me, bringing in a guy playing with a Hall of Fame talent. It's rare, and I know when you came up with the Maple Leafs, you rattled off a whole bunch of guys. I know Doug Gilmour, what he meant to you as a young player, and how much you respected him. But bringing in a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury, who's going to be a Hall of Famer one day, we all know that. He may be the first Hall of Famer to actually put on a Wild uniform. Just what do you think that means to the locker room, and what can that mean to maybe some of these young kids that have played such big roles down the stretch here for this team?
Well, it's great. And first off, Kaapo Kähkönen, he's he had a terrific time with us, and he's got an opportunity to be a starter in San Jose. So for him, we're excited for him to get an opportunity to possibly play more and be a part of their group. But we'll miss him. But with Marc-Andre, I like he comes in and can be a perfect tandem with Cam Talbot, and both guys are unconditional team guys. You can tell right away, and obviously you're getting to know Marc-Andre as his teammates are, and just his persona, which is outstanding. Like he treats people well. He's humble and he loves the game. But it just adds strength, and he's been there. He's won it multiple. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. All these things, but most importantly, he likes. You can tell he likes Minnesota. He likes being here with this group. He sees something, and I'm sure feels something when you talk to him, that he's like, this has a chance. And he, you talk about the young players, and those are things that are learned from your top leaders of how you respect the game. And but even Marc-Andre, or even people, it's one-on-one on how you treat people. And no one is the fun part about the game is we all have a role, but no one's bigger than the game. And Wayne Gretzky or whoever, or Mark Messier, no one's bigger. You all have a part. Some people are going to go to the Hall of Fame. Some people are going to play a longer career, score more goals. But I think how you treat people is so important in our sport, so important within a team. And, those things are like, it's so important. And our veterans remind our young guys of that. But our young guys get it. And I think that's what those are just the little parts underneath behind the scenes that I think go a long, long way. And, it's fun. And like I said, over time, guys are going to have their moments. And it was a Matt Boldy last night. But at the same token, don't get too ahead of yourself. You know what? You got a bright future, but the little things off the ice, where you're at, how you treat people, how you conduct yourself are so important. And our leadership group at the top really sets the tone that way, in the right way.
Well, Darby, we know you're going to be a playoff team. We know right now likely you're going to play the St. Louis Blues. The side of the division, or this division, this side of the conference is stacked. I believe, in my eyes, if you count Nashville, St. Louis, Minnesota, and Colorado, there are 4 teams good enough to win a cup. I think Calgary's the 5th in the West that's at that level. So looking at that series against St. Louis, knowing what kind of dogfight it's going to be in your eyes, and I'm sure the coaches have talked about this, in the final 6 games, how do you balance getting some key guys, some rest, and wanting to have home ice advantage when you know this team and you know how well they've played at home and you know what the crowd's going to bring in St. Paul on any playoff night? We've seen it for years. Is it something that's the driving force right now? How much does it matter for you guys to finish in front of St. Louis?
We would like to. I mean, there's no doubt about it, to have your games at home in Minnesota, where we like playing in our building. There's no doubt about it. At the same token, it's got to play out. Yeah, and there's questions in terms of some guys that are a little banged up, and do you give rest or not? I mean, those things have been discussed, but we want to finish strong. We don't want to. You want to have momentum going in, and yeah, you're in, but we want to feel good in our game. It's going to be a quick turnaround after our last game. There's maybe a day in between that we're hearing at this point when it'll start. So putting those things together is its own art. I know through Dean, those things have been brought up of how to do it, and through Billy Guerin of how we want to manage that. And it's going to be important because guys are going to need a little rest. We played a lot of games here in the last month, and guys who play heavy minutes, we got to really monitor that correctly. As far as St. Louis, we are really excited. They are a good team, as you mentioned, the other ones, but so are we. And when we're us, meaning we play heavy, we play physical, and our skill can come out of that. But we really compete. We really feel like we can play with anyone, but we have to do that. We can't be a little off, because we know St. Louis is good and they've had our number to a degree. But the moves we've made and the players that have come in, we're a little different team than maybe we were at the Winter Classic or last year playing against St. Louis. So we've had 2 overtime games against them, and obviously with our group that we have now for the most part. And we're right there.
The Sieve and the Scribe want to thank one of our founding sponsors, Tim Cortez Studio, for supplying the artwork for our podcast. Cortez is a famed artist and former Gopher goaltender whose work is prominently displayed on the exterior of Duluth's Heritage Sports Center in a series of 20-foot by 34-foot banners representing commitment, dedication, courage, honor, hard work, teamwork, integrity, and sportsmanship. Check out his art at www.timcortez.net. That's TIMCORTES.net, or follow Tim Cortez Studio on Facebook, where you can find commission work for the United States Hockey Hall of Fame and the UMD Bulldogs championship teams. Email timcortezstudios@gmail.com for more information.
Hey, pal, you already know that CrankyApe.com is the coolest auction site on the web for everything that rolls, floats, or has an engine. But did you know we'll also sell your toys for you? Why deal with sketchy characters, tire kickers, and no-shows when you can have the ape do it? It's a heck of a lot easier, and if you're not built like me, a lot safer too. Just go to CrankyApe.com and click on the blue burst. I'll take it from there. CrankyApe.com. Why monkey around anywhere else?
And we are back on the Sieve and the Scribe. Can't thank Darby Hendrickson enough, Kevin. Gosh, you weren't kidding. We could have gone on for hours and hours and hours. I had probably 10 questions just on the 03 run alone. That was for me when I wrote my book, 100 Things Wild Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. By the way, you can buy that on Amazon, all your bookstores.
Nice.
It's still available. Got to get the plug in there. That was the fun part of me for writing that book, was talking to all those guys from that 03 run and just hearing some of the behind the scenes. I was like, we didn't even get into that story about Todd Bertuzzi and how he walked through the XL Energy Center lobby and basically said, why are you fans standing in line? The series isn't coming back to St. Paul, and how that filtered back to the Wild dressing room and how they ended up, proving that theory wrong, just to say it kindly. But I can't thank Darby Hendrickson enough. We had a nice segue there towards the end, though, Kevin. This current Wild team is on a heck of a run right now. As we sit here recording this podcast Wednesday afternoon, coming off a win in Montreal Tuesday night, shutout victory, 2-0 there. Both the Blues and the Wild stand at 103 points in the Central Division. Almost a certainty, Kevin, at this point, they will be 2-3. I mean, some really crazy things would have to happen the rest of the way for either Dallas or Nashville to jump them in the standings. So let's assume that the higher seed there, we're not going to assume that. The higher seed will get home ice to start that series. The Blues have one fewer game remaining. Kevin will go through them. They start a 4-game trip. 4 of their final 5 games are on the road. Now, at San Jose, at Arizona, at Anaheim, not exactly a meat grinder. Still, the California swing, not easy. I mean, we've been through that enough. They're going to get some quality games there. At Colorado, we don't know what the Avalanche are going to look like at that point in the season. And Vegas to wrap up the season in St. Louis for the Blues. Again, we don't know what that's going to look like. Vegas may need a win to get in. By that point in the season, they're going to have to get hot here. Minnesota, home to Vancouver, home to Seattle, at Nashville, home to Arizona, home to Calgary, home to Colorado. Don't know what those two teams are going to look like at the end. They're basically locked into the 1-2 seeds in the Western Conference. So you look at it, Kevin, on paper, Wild a bulk of their games at home, Blues a bulk on the road. Minnesota, a critical game in hand that's going to end up being that Calgary game next week is going to be where that's made up. How do you see this, sort of simmering down here at the end of the year? And clearly Minnesota wants to get that home ice because they are an elite team at XL Energy Center.
Well, Dan, it's hard to believe, but as I sit here and handicap this, I think the number is 113. And it blows my mind to even echo that sentence. 113 points. A lot of years get you in the conversation for the President's Trophy, but I think I think that's the number if you're the Wild, where you want to feel comfortable that you can't end tied, because St. Louis absolutely owns the tiebreaker. If you get to 113, you likely will have home ice, which means, if we do the math, 5 more wins or 4-0-2. So you've got to get 10 more points. Not going to be easy. You look at the game in Nashville is probably the most difficult game on the schedule, because when you get Calgary and Colorado to close out the year, those final 2 games, both those teams are likely going to be locked into where they are. And I would have to think at least a couple players on those squads will not play. Now, we talked to Dean Evison yesterday up in Montreal, and he certainly mentioned that there's possibilities of needing to get some players some rest. The Wild are without a handful of guys right now. And I think you have to balance this out, too, because, you've got players like Brodin and Spurgeon, Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Hartman, Fiala, Boldy that are playing hard minutes. and you want your team to be in their best position to make a run and not run them into the ground. So I think the coaching staff will balance that out. I think Bill Guerin will absolutely make his opinion well known, and I think they'll weigh it out accordingly. But I think if you want to get in for sure and have home ice, you got to get to 113, and that's the challenge ahead.
You look at just how daunting the schedule has been, and you mentioned getting some guys some rest. Minnesota has been without for several games now. Jordan Greenway, John Merrill, Matt Dumba, Marcus Foligno is currently on the COVID-19 protocol list, and they've still been able to find ways to win games and get points. Getting these guys, they're not having to rush some of these injured guys back into the lineup, and just how critical that's been. Going to get some rest here from these big dogs, but how do you, when you look at it, balance that sort of rest versus getting home ice? 113 points. It'd be nice to maybe get Kirill Kaprizov a game here at some point. It'd be nice to maybe get Matt Zuccarello for sure, a veteran guy. Some of these more veteran guys, maybe get them a game. That Minnesota's 2 back-to-back sets remaining this season. They're both at home, which will help. But how do you sort of make that balance? And where do you think Dean Evison and this coaching staff may try and work that rest into the equation?
It's a great question. I think if you're able to hold serve in these 2 home games coming up Thursday and Friday, home to Vancouver, who's playing great hockey, 6-0-1 in their last 7, and absolutely trying to make a late push for a playoff position. In Seattle, who second of a back-to-back, you get a little nervous about that team, because they're going to give you effort for Hackstall. But if you can get those 2 wins right there, for me, the first time I start to consider resting players is in Nashville, and especially if I'm going to rest Kirill Kaprizov. I don't know if this even comes up in the conversations with the general manager and the coaches, but I think if you're going to get him a night off, you do it on the road. I think that the fans in St. Paul are so starved to see this kid, and it's such a big deal to see the families that show up for warmups with the 97 sweaters and the signs for him and all the Wild players, Fiala and Fleury. I mean, it's just amazing how the magic in that building has now trickled over into warmups half an hour before game time. If you haven't done it and you're a fan, I think you owe it to yourself to see it. It's pretty remarkable. But I think that'd be the first place in Nashville where I'd consider resting some of those high-end guys. It's a physical, grinding game down there. You give some younger guys. We saw Chafee last night. You've got Duhaime and Stewart and some of these guys. I'd love to bring them into battle and to see what they can do in a tough environment that Nashville rink provides. But, it's tough because you're likely going to have a harder time winning without some of those star players in a place like Nashville. So you've got to balance that out. I think for sure the following week, when Colorado and Calgary come calling, you're going to see some guys that rest. I think that's a natural spot.
When you look at the schedule, the playoffs scheduled to start May 2nd. We don't know who's going to be playing on that day. Could be May 2nd, could be May 3rd. The season wraps up April 29th. So either way, Minnesota could be in a position where it has 2 to 3 days of rest between the end of the regular season and the start of the playoffs. And of course, at this point, mathematically, I know it's not clinched. They know who they're playing. It's going to be the Wild and the Blues. Real quick, Kevin, when you look at that matchup, I know it's gone the way of St. Louis largely lately. I think the Blues have won somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 of the last 14 or 11 of the last 13. 5 or 6 of those have gone to overtime. 2 more have been 1-goal games. So it's not, there have been a couple blowouts mixed in there. We saw Minnesota with that crazy comeback in St. Louis last Saturday. How much do you think that can maybe give this team? I know they didn't get the win, but that comeback in the third period to at least force overtime and get a point, that could have a very big mental effect, at least in terms of giving this team some confidence heading into game 1 of that series, no matter where it's played.
Yeah, no question. I think that was important that Minnesota came back. I think they're going to look back on that game as a pivotal point if they are able to beat the Blues in that first-round playoff series psychologically, to basically reminding themselves that they can skate with that team, they can make plays, and there's a lot of different ways the Wild can win against St. Louis. I think what you have to rely on if you handicap the matchup is this. I don't look at the blowouts last year, the records last year, or the year before. I don't care about that. This year's team is the best Wild team I've ever seen. period. History of the organization. You look at what they're doing right now. There was no Matt Boldy on that team last year. Kirill Kaprizov is at a different level. Kevin Fiala is at a different level. Marc-Andre Fleury is here. He was not here. So I look at the games this year, and game number 1 was outdoors at Target Field. I throw that right out the window. Wow, we're playing terrible hockey. It was outdoor hockey. It was, 10 below zero. That was a fun, cool thing. It was a spectacle, but it's not how I handicap this series. I look at the 2 games in St. Louis, and these are evenly matched teams. And the Blues won 3-on-3 overtime. It's like a shootout. It's a cute, fun thing. That's not how we settle the score come playoff time. These 2 teams are both good enough to win a cup. And I think the team that comes out of this series is going to be a problem for whoever they play in round 2. And even if it's Colorado, these teams are built to beat teams like that. The way I look at the series this way, Dan, I think St. Louis has the experience. Many guys on that side have won a cup. They've done it. They know what it takes. They've got leadership. They've got a great coach, and they're physical and they're deep. Minnesota, to me, is a team that is coming of age right now. They've got experience on their side. They've got talent on their side. They've got the better high-end talent. And I think the series goes 6 or 7 games, and I think that's why you play for home ice here down the stretch. I know that in the NHL playoffs, home ice advantage sometimes gets overplayed, but in a game 7, whether it's in St. Louis or in St. Paul, if these teams are that evenly matched, and they sure look like it when you take a look at how the series might play out, I want game 7 to be in St. Paul. I think that could tip the scale.
Just real quick too, Kevin, by the way, looking back, and I didn't realize this, I guess, when you were talking about it, and I thought about it after. Thinking back to that Winter Classic game, no Matt Boldy, wasn't with the team yet. He wouldn't make his NHL debut for another, week? I think January 6th he made his debut. That game obviously was January 1st. Minnesota also in that game, no Joel Eriksson was injured. No Jonas Brodin was injured, or he had COVID-19. I think Ek had COVID as well. And no Jared Spurgeon. He was injured. And those are 3 pretty big cogs, and I'm with you. It's an outdoor game. Throw it out the window, really. Final game was 6-4, 5 goals in the second period for St. Louis. Game got away. Minnesota rallied late to make it at least close and competitive. But those are 3 pretty big cogs in the lineup. I tend to lean more on, even if you are going to go back to last year, all these overtime and 1-goal games. This series, either way, Kevin, is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very close. It's going to be very physical. And it's probably going to go at least 6, if not 7 games. And I'm with you. Home ice is going to be critically important. Before we go, wanted to bring up Kevin Fiala. How about the run this guy is on right now, Kevin? Riding I think his point streak's up to 7 games now. He's got 7 goals and 7 assists during that stretch. But more than just the past 7 games. We saw with Kevin Fiala when he was traded to this team a couple of years ago, he'd come in and 2 or 3 weeks he'd be red hot. He'd go ice cold. Then that first full year, he'd be hot for a month, then he'd cool off. Hot for 3 weeks, then cool off. Last year, it'd be hot for maybe a month and a half. This year, Kevin, we've seen him play outstanding hockey now for 4 months. He has been great for 4 months. And that, part of that was when he had a rotating cast of characters before Matt Boldy came up. With all due respect to the Rem Pitlicks of the world, the Victor Rasks of the world, guys that were in and out of the lineup, guys that are now on other teams because they were waived. Ever since Matt Boldy specifically was put on that other wing with Freddie Gaudreau, and they've had great chemistry all year long, he's been unstoppable, Kevin. He's been one of the best players in the league, and Kirill Kaprizov gets all the headlines, and deservedly so for the year he's having. Kevin Fiala very well may be the key for this team in a long playoff run.
I think LaPantha brought it up on the broadcast last night on Valley Sports that it's already a top 5 season production-wise, and he's going to end up somewhere in the top 2 or 3 if you project where he's headed right now. For me, I'm not surprised about the offensive end of things. The 30 goals does not shock me. Seeing Kevin Fiala play without the puck now, specifically on the penalty kill, and the way he can create turnovers, use his speed, chip the puck off the wall 5-on-5, or shorthanded, seeing the way he's a more consistent player, not turning the puck over. Part of that's a big credit to Kevin Fiala and his hard work. He's certainly put a lot of time in to evolve to this place with his game, but a big part of it goes to Dean Evason and this coaching staff, because habits are hard to break for athletes, especially the talented ones at a high level. And Evason and this coaching staff have taken the time to build this guy's game. And he is so much more complete now as a hockey player here in April than he even was when this season started back in October. And yes, Kevin Fiala has done the work and he has made the plays. And so most of the credit has to go to the player. But I don't think it happens without the connection he has with this coach, with this coaching staff, and the accountability that he has for his teammates, and the way that that kind of generates itself in the room right now with the way these guys respect each other and treat each other. So it's been super cool to see. It's one of the great parts of our job. You know, we get there, Dan, for training camp. You're doing your stories. We're doing all our TV stuff. You get that media day. Where can this team go? Where can Kevin Fiala go? And then you see the finished product at the end of the year, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is what it's all about. This is what the game is all about. These are what sports are all about. This kid has gone from a good, really good, now to superstar great player. And credit to him and the coaching staff. It's been great to see.
Kevin Fiala, the first 8 games of the season. This is kind of the part of the year. He admitted it a few days ago that didn't get off to a great start. He had 1 goal and 2 assists when the calendar turned from October to November. 8 games. You take those 8 games out of the equation, in 67 games, this guy's put up 70 points. He's been a point-per-game player for a bulk of the season for this Wild team. And still, he's been around for so long, Kevin, sometimes you forget he's only 25 years old. This is a guy who is probably just now, and we've seen it. I think, no question, his maturity this year, his experience this year, he is a different player than we've seen in the past. This is a guy who I think a switch has flipped for him. He's figured it out, and he has the talent to be this kind of player every year, I think, for the Wild, a guy that can be in that 80 to 90 point mix, that 30 to 40 goal mix every year. Hopefully the Wild is able to find a way, somehow, some way. Billy Guerin, very smart guy. They're going to have to do some cap gymnastics here this summer. Hopefully they can find a way to be the beneficiaries of a guy who sure looks like he is coming into his own. Kevin, as always, it's been a pleasure. We should put a cap on the show. Our thanks again to the fine folks at State Farm Insurance, Eric Means, Andy Hedlund. Our thanks to Megan Kogut from Wild PR for helping us track down Darby Hendrickson. And, of course, Darby for coming on and spending some time with us. We're looking forward to our show next week. Kevin, should be a lot of fun. We have Brad Schlossman on tap from the Grand Forks Herald. For my money, the very best college hockey writer in the country. We're going to put a bow on the college hockey season, a very exciting Frozen Four, but a very busy early start to the college hockey offseason. Never ends anymore, Kevin. We've got transfer portal. We got the Gophers. Holy cow. They got a whole bunch of big timers coming back to make a run at a national championship next season. Bunch of coaching changes. We'll get into all that with Brad Schlossman next week here on the Sieve and the Scribe. Thanks to our producer, Zach Halverson, for putting this all together. And it's going to be extra work this week because of the technical difficulties. We apologize for that. Having our conversation with Darby Hendrickson cut short, but it was still very meaningful, very good stuff, and we hope you enjoyed it. For Kevin Gorg, I'm Dan Myers. We'll talk to you next week on episode 14 of the Sieve and the Scribe podcast.
Dave's Sports Shop in Fridley, Minnesota, the top hockey shop in the North Metro since 1969. Specializing in custom fit hockey gear, top quality skate sharpening. We've got a full lineup: CCM, Bauer, Sherwood, True, Vaughn, and many more. We also offer used and new skates. We'll take those old skates in on trade for your new skates. Dave's Sports Shop, where the winners shop. Come find out why. Mention this ad to get your free skate sharpening.